I would like to be able to make a coherent video where I could clear some things up, but I don't know how concise I can be because I have no idea what I'm really going to say. Just a very loose idea of what I'd like to convey. And even when I want to start by saying that I understand this notion of when you when you preface what you're going to say about something with, let me explain something to you, or even something as subtle as, I want to be able to explain, or I would like to clear some things up, even, something like that. Immediately people get defensive. You have to understand that when that was ironic because I just prefaced what I was about to say with, you have to understand that it's just natural, though. It's a natural verbiage for when you're trying to convey an idea that deep in the recesses of your soul to be true. You know something so fundamentally, and you want to be able to preach it to someone else. But when you start to get very preachy, people get on the defensive immediately, and just automatically they're going to have a hard time absorbing what you want to say. That's why I think Sarah Silverman is nice, but I'm not really one of those limousine liberals where, I don't give a fuck. So I'm very rough around the edges because I tend to be a little bit of an asshole. I'm, happy to admit that. I don't care. It's not a contest. I'm not trying to win you over, on a personal level. So when we talk about politics, it's hard to have a substantive debate because everybody just wants to fight. Everybody wants to lash out at you and defend their territory, their intellectual territory. It's very territorial. They're trying to defend their turf that they've carved out in this little small place, usually within a bubble nowadays. And so when you start to scratch at the surface of their worldview, they do what Obama said they did 9-10 years ago when he accidentally uttered the words, they cling to their guns and their Bibles. He shouldn't have said that because of the fallout and how people use it against them. But he's right. That's what they do. When people start to defend their turf, they just cling to the thing that feels like home to them, the thing that feels self-soothes them the best, the thing that was with them usually from an early age, something, and then that tends to be something that was put into them from the outside. So it's not genuine. And so I know when people fight me on these issues, it sounds so disingenuous to me because it's not who's talking? Is that you, or is that your father? Or is that you, or is that Fox News? Is that you, or it's never them. It's never them fighting back. It's always they're just parroting some Republican spin machine soundbite that they heard on Fox News because that's the thing that appealed to them on a deeper level. And so I'm trying to get to the core of what this Trump phenomenon is. And, honestly, it's not that difficult. But again, I come off as, sanctimonious and condescending because I don't see it as being that hard to understand. But there is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's this irony that if most of these, now I'm painting with a broad brush, see, I'm not following my own rules. If most of these Trump voters and supporters were to dig a little deeper, if they were a little bit more in touch with themselves, if they could just dig deeper to the heart of what is really fueling them, they would end up with Bernie. The candidate that you guys wanted was Bernie. And I'm not just trying to defend him because he was a perfectly flawed candidate as well. There was, we're not given great choices. And by the time the general election came around, we were given two, not appealing choices. And so the one with the most energy won, because that's just inertia. That's the way it works. I felt like Trump was going to win. I really did, because his campaign had more energy. Bernie's campaign had more energy. It had a higher ceiling than Hillary's. It had more room for growth. If Bernie would have gotten the bid, the Democratic nomination, he would have hit the ground running, and immediately it would have gone from, I guess, a smaller movement to possibly, potentially a revolution, because Trump right now is bordering on what you'd have to call a revolution. It's just not a revolution in the way that we needed, because it's disingenuous. He's a con man. He sold you a bill of goods, and I feel bad that you fell for it, and I want to understand why. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he appealed to people who have seen a lot of their hopes and dreams just die on the vine. They're over the age of having any youthful exuberance. Their bones are getting creaky. Their joints hurt. And it's not just an age thing, but it's, literally and figuratively, they just feel like their life didn't turn out the way they wanted in some way, shape, or form. And they're tired of seeing others, quote unquote, seemingly flourish. The country is starting to get more black and more brown, which, honestly, it's really not. It's been this way for quite a while now. It's just now it's more in your face, with the advent of social media. And what I always like to say is, like, this all started with Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and then MTV Cribs, because never before did we have such behind-the-scenes access to how the super wealthy were living. And then it was just a slippery slope down. We careened towards, the middle class evaporated for a bevy of reasons. And the wage gap, the class war, the class gap between the rich and the poor, and the irony of how all these Trump supporters are so much more closely aligned to the people that they think they hate than they are with Donald Trump or anyone he knows and anyone he rubs elbows with. Do you think Donald Trump cares about you? Do you think he's a great patriot? Come on, really? How faulty is your understanding of human nature? How bad a judge of character must you be to think that Trump is in this for you? He's in it for himself. Trump's global in his self-aggrandizing aspirations. He doesn't care about country. He cares about Trump Inc. That's his country. That's his corporation. He cares about his own brand. Everything else he may or may not do for you would be just some indirect byproduct of what he's trying to do for himself. And there I go, immediately, people are going to shut me down because I got a little nasty. Because it's tiring. It's hard. How far back do you want a person to go to try and explain how you ended up where you currently reside? How ends up a therapy session. Tell me about your relationship with your father, how far back? Because these are personal choices. These are not, how long have you been following politics? A year and a half? 2 years? That's the way I feel. That's the way you start to feel, because even I get intellectually fatigued at times. And you think you're so smart with your big words. Where did I use any fucking big words? What, malapropism? It's a big word. I'm not guilty of it. I'm not trying to use big words. It's not a contest. I don't care, man. I just feel like I understand what's really going on in one particular area, because I've been, conscious and awake for a certain amount of time, and I've seen what's happened going all the way back. And to fully understand what's happening in politics in this country, you have to understand what happened 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. History repeats itself. It's an old cliche, but it does. You guys, you Trump supporters, because I'm running out of time. This is just going on and on. I don't want to just, I'll just cut to the chase. You know, like, you Trump supporters would have defended Nixon right up until the bitter end. You know what I mean? And I knew this video wasn't going to work. I'm running out of energy.